Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. How was your lunch? Was it good? Yeah? Have you tried Thai food before? Yes? So it's from now on, it's going to be pretty interesting topics as well. For the third session of Thailand Focus 2013, the next session would be, it's going to involve with the energy connectivity in the region, which is one of the key drivers of Thai economies at the moment, and as well as in the near future as well. So please come on up in the ballroom here, because the third session will be starting soon. Please. And our apologies to let distinguished guests know that this room, as you can see, that has been changed, has been reorganized from the morning session. So your belongings in the morning session is moved to the back of the room. If you have problems with your belongings, please contact the staff over there on your left-hand side and also the right-hand side. All right, it is time to start the afternoon session now. This particular session will be panel discussion on the topic, increasing energy connectivity in the region. The panelists in these sessions are following. Mr. Surong Bulakul, Chief Financial Officer, PTT Public Company Limited. Dr. Piyasvasti Amranand, Chairman of Energy for Environment Foundation. And the panel discussion will run by our moderator, Mr.Komsun Suksumrun from Phatra Securities Public Company Limited. May I now invite all panelists together with our moderator on stage to begin the next session. Please give a warm welcome to all panelists. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to kick off this session with a question to Kun Surong first, because I think the connectivity has been and it continues to be a very interesting topic for all among investors. The questions that I would like to ask would be that, Kun Surong, could you please provide a short summary on how PTT Group of company see opportunities in this LBMC market, or Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, and Cambodia, both in the short and in the long terms? And to be more specific, in which area of the energy sector that the group interests in the most?
Okay, thank you, Kun Komsun. Basically, PTT pretty much being outside of Thailand for almost 20 years already, so we know the neighboring country very well. I think when we talk about investment in the region, for PTT, we have to consider twofold. The land-based ASEAN, which is CLNV, as Kun Komsun said, and the waterborne ASEAN, which is connectivity to water-based, which island ASEAN itself. So in terms of land-based ASEAN, which is pretty much exciting, and pretty much people are pretty much concentrating on ASEAN at the moment in aspect of the Thai. We are pretty much in every country in the region already. We have been in Cambodia in doing aviation service, doing retail. We are in Laos in terms of renewable energy and retail business. We are in Myanmar in exploration. We are working on the retail, the first PTT retail station in Myanmar, and we are still looking forward to upgrade the petrochemical and refining complex in Myanmar. This is what they call a developing area. For the rest of the ASEAN, we have oil blending and trading activity in Malaysia, in Peninsular Malaysia. We have trading and operating office in Singapore, which is pretty much being done for the past 20 years. We have pretty much a resource base in Indonesia, in coal mining, in upstream, and in palm oil plantation. In Brunei, we are exploring the coal resources in there. And finally, the Philippines, we pretty much have a retail operation over there for the past 20 years. We are also in aviation services. So the business seems still very small, and I think to remind the investor that this is a newly emerged, newly developing, so they still need room to grow. So we cannot flood in with a big investment in there. For example, in Laos, our first retail station, which we plan to use what they call the same standard throughout ASEAN, the first retail station, oil service station, make a big deal in Laos in the sense that it's provide new technology in there. So it's basically we're going to go small, we're going to go after extended value added to the business. So we are pretty much clear on ASEAN focus of what we're going to do and basically go along with the opportunity which is open. So I think this is probably to summarize on the investment in ASEAN itself.
Okay, ขอบคุณมากครับ let's hear from the regulatory perspective นะครับ Dr. เบสวัสดิ์ครับ what do you think about the regulatory risk in these countries? Are they low, medium, or manageable?
I'm not really sure if I can answer that question. As I had told you, I'm not really all that familiar with regulatory framework in these countries, that is LVMC. To be fair, a lot of things which exist in this country do not exist in LVMC. So if you look at the various energy projects which had been developed in Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, and so on, you will see that the large projects are basically projects providing power or energy to Thailand. So there are bilateral contracts, agreements, totally bypassing rules and regulations in these countries. So the project risk are governed by the power purchase agreement or gas supply agreement in the case of Myanmar, and nearly all, I suppose that all projects use English law. So these projects are not constructed or built, financed using regulatory framework in LVMC. And if you look into the future, you will see exactly the same pattern. That is, the large projects which will be materializing in Laos, in Burma, whether it's gas or electricity, in Cambodia, for example, like Kok Kong. These will again probably be projects which will be supplying electricity or gas to Thailand based on bilateral contracts between buyer in this country and the investor in LVMC.
So in a nutshell, basically this country doesn't have any well-established regulatory framework to work on. That is a risk in itself. Am I correct to assume that?
There are regulatory framework. Of course, that there are permits you have to get. You have to go through the process. But I think the important thing, like a power project, is probably the power purchase agreement between, in the case of Thailand, would be EGAT and the investor. In the case of gas supply agreement, it would be the developer of the gas field and PTT, and the risk, of course, depends on the agreement plus the risk of the buyer. But again, in certain things, there are regulatory frameworks which you will have to comply with. Gas development in Myanmar, for example, PTT has to comply with the rule or regulations or whatever that exists in that country. But of course, there is nothing as clear as what you see in Thailand.
The next question is for Kun Surong. How will the PTT Group company capitalize on this trend? It has been on everyone's mind. That how would you and the group have a long-term and short-term strategy on this one?
Okay, so let me go through the scenario on the land-based ASEAN first. That means we are talking about intercontinental ASEAN. I think there's three characters of intercontinental ASEAN. First of all, we are land connected, so land transportation will be very important. Secondly, we are in the center of the land-based ASEAN. So that means we are in the center somewhere connected with the land transportation. And finally, we are short of energy, always. So basically, if you blend it in, Thailand have to come up with Thailand strategy toward ASEAN. Are we going to be a producer of ASEAN, or are we going to be exporter of ASEAN? If we want to be a producer of ASEAN, we really have to be there, invest in there, producing or do marketing in there. If we want to be an exporter, we have to build super infrastructure in order to get access to the good and capital. So we are building along the two way. The first part is when it's land-based. So we are positioning ourselves in the area that traffic will go through. At the moment, we have a connected highway. It's not yet finished, but it's going to be there. So the connectivity between China and Singapore, what are we going to get from there? We have a lot of problems we have to clear. Like, for example, in Malaysia, the Thai truck are still not allowed to drive through Malaysia. So this is the area that we have to really dig into what is the barrier into opening up of the station. Are we going to do Tawai? Is Tawai is our focus point? Is Tawai going to be an exporting or manufacturing for Myanmar? If it's going to be exporting, the transportation has to be there. What is our role of energy service provider? What are we going to be? So basically, it's two parts of going along with the Thailand strategy on business infrastructure. Secondly, as historically, Dr. Piyasvasti said that we always in need of energy. So what are we going to add it when we have a demand in Thailand? What are we connected to them? At the moment, everyone are really holding to their resources. Is no one going to give you free of charge of digging the resources from. So what is the value added that we're going to have? We're going to use the Thailand model, the PTT model of building up from resources to higher value. We bring gas, transporting gas onshore. We extract the gas. We have 50 times value added by building petrochemical, and the rest will go to power. Would this success story can be replicated in Cambodia? Would this can be replicated in Vietnam or in Myanmar? So I think it's a shared value in the sense that there's no one way of winner take all. It's going to be a share, and what is the fair share? So this is the role of PTT, is fostering and promoting the success story that we have. I think the joint development between Thailand and Malaysia in the gas exploration and production would be a very nice sample of how to do cooperative thing, how to work together and win together. So I think we have to leverage on what are we good at. For PTT, there's three pillars that we have to go through. First is financial strength. Secondly is technology. And finally is human resources. To be very frank, we are not excellent in all. We have them all, but it's not to the first quartile yet. So how are we going to leverage? How to bring technology and added value to the host country and share the value on that. I think that is a very important point. You have to bring the demand and add value to the supply. So I think this is the model PTT is looking for. But again, this is our home base. This is the area, ASEAN is the area that we think is the easiest way of expanding our own legacy asset that we have.
Okay, to follow up on these questions, which is very interesting, how will PTT develop or create a win-win situation in which that those countries also benefit from your strategy?
Okay, so I think, for example, let's take Myanmar, for example. Okay, so Myanmar, we take 20% of the gas supply is imported from Myanmar. Very important, probably the most important in terms of the gas. 70% of electricity is generated by natural gas. So we totally depend on Myanmar. As you can recall, last year we had to be repairing of the exploration platform for 10 days. It's a big deal already. We are short of gas. So we are very vulnerable in terms of shortage of gas. But the new issue arises. Aung San Suu Kyi came last year and said, Myanmar need an energy policy. I don't think the politician can accept exporting gas to the neighboring country, and they themselves shortage of gas. We are consuming about 27,000 megawatt in Thailand, and in Myanmar it's only 3,000. So I think this is the area that we had to be blended in. Our first priority is the new gas reservoir is coming up at the end of this year. We're going to split to Myanmar 20%. So they will use the indigenous resources to provide generation. The new exploration block, M3, which is closer to shore, we're going to dedicate it to Myanmar. And we hope we try to promote a coal-firing power plant in Myanmar in order for them to be sufficiency in terms of energy, and hopefully remaining some excess of the gas can come to Thailand. Or else, the coal-firing power plant could be a dual supply purposes, in the sense that can supply some portion to Myanmar and some supply portion to Thailand. But this is the area of development that you have to bring value to the neighboring country. If the resource exploitation in the past 50 years is not there anymore. So the area is exchange what we do best, put the model, the best technology for them, and share the value together. So make sure that the host country would be satisfied for us being there. So that's, I think, that's the important point for them.
Very interesting. Let's move back to Dr. Piyasvasti again. Similar to stock investment, every investment is without risk. We have touched a little bit on the regulatory. In your view, what would be the key challenges in investing in these countries? Should we be concerned about the cultural differences, the political instability, or anything else that you might think of?
Are you talking about direct investment, or are you talking about investing in shares for companies which invest in these countries?
Direct investment, because we invest through the company which have to bear those risks, so we can perceive or can understand the risk that
you mean you are talking about the investor investing directly in these countries? Or are you talking about investors who will be buying shares in PTT, ECO, or...
Yeah, buying shares in PTT, and PTT has to bear those risks in those countries.
Well, the main risk, I would have thought, is that there is no clear regulatory framework, no clear laws and regulations, and you need political connections in order to come up with a deal. And in certain cases, the process could take years and years. For example, in the case of Myanmar, we signed the MOU with the government of Myanmar back in 1997 on the development of power projects, buying power from hydroelectric dams in Myanmar. That was 1997. Now it's 2013. I don't think we had moved at all from 1997. We signed a similar agreement, I think, with Cambodia, probably back in 2000. And Kok Kong, the Kok Kong coal-fired power plant, had been under discussion for nearly 15 years. We are still going round and round in a circle. The other day I read in the newspaper that Ratburi claimed that someone had snatched the project from Ratburi, and then the next day Ratburi decided not to do it. But actually, if you go back, you will see that Ratburi probably snatched the project from someone else in the first place. It's been going round and round for the past 13 years. And the only projects I would have thought where we had seen progress are those related to gas supply in Myanmar. This is the only area which is moving, and PTT, EP obviously knows how to get around it. In the case of electricity in Laos, that is also the only area where we had seen progress, enormous progress, and we are still seeing progress. And negotiating with the Laotian government on power purchase is probably fairly straightforward. I would have said that a lot more straightforward than negotiation with other governments in this area. And that's why we had been able to make a lot of progress. Thai investors have been able to make a lot of progress in developing power projects in Laos for sale to Thailand. And in the next few years, medium term, or even up to 2020, I think you will still see projects in Laos continuing to supply new projects, supplying more power to Thailand. In the case of Myanmar, just one thing, building on what Kun Surong said. Now, in the past, we had made progress on gas. That is true. But if you look into the future, if you look at the energy requirement of Myanmar, the existing consumption of energy, which is so low, which is really low compared with the population, I'm pretty sure that energy consumption will probably grow by something like 6 times in the next 20 years. So which means that they will need a lot more gas. And there is that risk, of course, that the gas which Kun Surong was hoping for Thailand may not materialize, because Burma is already, there's enormous shortage of electricity, and gas for power generation is the easiest way of providing electricity to the consumers in Myanmar. So actually, if I were the Burmese government, I wouldn't be selling Thailand or China any more uncontracted natural gas. Better to keep it for their own use, but develop the hydro projects, which is renewable energy for the sale to Thailand. And the hydro potential is enormous in Burma.
And do you concern about the political instability in those countries, or it has already improved over the years?
Well, if you compare this to the past, it has improved enormously. Look back to the early 1990s, when Thai investors started to develop hydro projects in Laos. There was still a lot of uncertainty. That was just after the fall of communism in Europe. The country was changing, and there was a lot more risk at that time compared to what you are talking about now. In the case of Myanmar as well, when PTT built the first gas pipeline to Ratburi, that was in the 1990s, we decided to have a part of the Ratburi power plant, a thermal power plant, not because we were afraid that the Burmese government would one day cut off the gas supply or there would be problems with the platform, but we were afraid that the insurgents would blow up the pipeline. So that was the risk at that time in Burma. So compared to what we had gone through, I think the political instability had improved enormously.
Thank you, Kap. This question is for Kun Surong, Kap. I'm certain that the other national oil companies or NOCs are also gunning or seeing the same opportunities in this country. So given this, could you elaborate a little bit more on the PTT competitive advantage over the other NOCs in these countries?
Okay, I think we have two parts. The land-based ASEAN, which is pretty much competitive in the sense that we have connectivity geographically, culture-wise very connected, and we pretty much is expanded from the end. So that means the extension of what about current business that we are doing. So that's pretty much quite an advantage. But when we talk about national oil company in the region, we have typically compare about 3 companies: Petronas, Pertamina, and PTT. Each have their own advantage and disadvantage. For Petronas, they are a global company. They are in the Fortune 100 long time ago. They are operating in over 35 countries with 400 subsidies. So they are pretty much on the global competitiveness. So they ain't going on the heavyweight. When you talk about Pertamina, it's very huge national oil company, very close in terms of culture with the Thai, but they are still very domestic oriented, with 250 million people to be served, There's still a need of growing. At the moment, the first ambitious plan is to build petrochemical complex adjacent or attached to the refinery. And that PTTGC, our affiliate, is have an honor to be selected to be working for them on the project itself. For Thailand, again, we are PTT, we are still growing, pretty much similar to Petronas, much slower, much smaller, much less profit because we don't own the gas. We just take the margin. But we are going on the platform that we need energy security to Thailand. So the business model for us is to bring energy to Thailand. The business model for Petronas is to go global, to be the global energy player, to be the top 5 energy player of the world. In Pertamina, it's just modernization. And when you talk about the rest of the country, like Laos, Cambodia, the Philippines, they're pretty much building up to build the sufficiency of the business. So it doesn't mean that all we have to compete. We can be collaborative. Like Thai, PTT and Petronas, we are collaborative on the gas supply into southern Thailand and northern Malaysia. We also have some external partnership in terms of upstream exploration. We also have Vietnam. The Vietnam, we have a joint venture. So I don't think there's going to be a direct competition between each national oil company, but I think each will have leverage more. Like, for example, Petronas have more leverage in retail business in Indonesia than Thailand. But we have more leverage in terms of petrochemical, where we have 30 years of experience, added on to their resources. So that is the value. So I think there's going to be a piece or the area that one will have benefit toward the other. But at the end game is who's going to bring value back to the host country. Probably that is probably the most important area of talking. Both PTT, EP, and Petronas are in exploration block in Myanmar. But as Dr. Piyasvasti said, the next round may be different. The next round may be the priority is energy for Myanmar, not energy for Thailand. So this is the area that we have to adapt from energy importer to be energy service provider. So I think the game we have to play according to the business landscape that is going to be coming.
On this question, let me expand the scope a little bit, because we have seen that the Exxon of the world, Chevron of the world is now starting to come into this region, particularly on this LVMC market. How do we compete with this guy, these global guys?
Have you heard the theory of chicken bone? The chicken bone is the end of the tail end of the chicken. It's too small to eat, So I think we play the role that we realize that where is the market that the big boy will not join. For example, if the oil production less than 20,000 barrels per day, most of these big boy probably not interested, because it's just too small for them to mobilizing people to do in the business. But again, for Thailand, 5,000, 10,000 barrels per day is probably a very interesting, very sizable. And we just realizing, go the other way, go against the big boy in Brazil, that's not work also, That is just too big for us. So I think we play the area of small to medium-sized E&P company, going with the partnership which have strength in technology, we have strength in geology, and match together. So it's the combination of business fit, the combination of culture, which is very important in Asia. A lot of the joint ventures are failed because we have different culture. So it is the area that the mentality is there. For PTT, the mentality is not optimizing the profit. For our model is balancing between high performance, corporate social responsibility, and sustainability. So I think we need a partner who's thinking the same way. The one who wants to capitalize on the profit on the short term, it may not be fit in terms of our long-term strategy. So I think it's going to be case by case, what value and what contribution the partner is going to be. But I think for the international project, it's most likely you cannot go alone anyway. So you need the support from the host country. You need a strong partner who have capability in function area. And for us, it's an area that we can contribute, which again is marketing side, which is PTT and Thailand have a lot of what they call almost unlimited demand in terms of energy.
This question is not for Dr. Piyasvasti นะครับ What we have discussed so far is how we're going to capitalize on these connectivities. Could it be the other way around with the connectivity improving, the ASEAN Economic Community or AECC coming up in the next couple of years? Could these trends be a threat rather than an opportunity for us in such a way that other companies can also operate in Thai market?
I don't think so. I think there is a big difference between energy and other goods and commodities. That is, you need some sort of infrastructure in order to invest in energy. Electricity, for example, you have to rely on the grid. In the case of gas, you have to rely on the gas pipeline, and these two activities are undertaken by EGAT in the case of electricity and PTT in the case of gas pipeline. So it wouldn't be economic simply to come in and build another transmission line. It cannot be done. So anybody who comes in will need to rely on the infrastructure already here, and you have to comply with the rules and regulations in Thailand or whatever. Actually, in the energy sector, we haven't really, energy sector is quite open already. Anybody can set up a power plant, provided you can get the permit, the various permits, or you win the bidding or whatever from the energy ministry. So it's already quite open. Now, and I don't think AEC or ASEAN or whatever will have any impact on the energy market in Thailand or in this area. And if you look at the past, you will see that the connectivity in the energy sector has absolutely nothing to do with ASEAN. It all happened before Burma or Laos or Vietnam, Cambodia became a part of ASEAN. It happened because Thailand needs energy, and we are by far the largest net energy importer in this region. On the other hand, it may actually open up opportunity for us. It could facilitate Thai investors in areas which we haven't been talking about, and that is things like renewable energy. Because I think we had built up enormous expertise in this country on renewable energy, anything from biomass, biogas, to wind and solar. And the cost has come down so much that now renewable energy is becoming competitive with fossil fuels, particularly if it's replacing diesel oil in remote areas in Burma, for example. And that could provide opportunities, I think, for Thai companies to go into other LVMC countries.
คุณสุรงค์ครับ we have discussed about LVMC opportunities, which seem to me like a long-term concept. Could you please elaborate a bit more in terms of in order of preference or in order of which one will come first, like Myanmar, and then we will be seeing more investment in Laos and then Vietnam?
We've been in ASEAN for almost 20 years, so it's probably nothing come first or what are we going to be invest in. I think as Dr. Piyasvasti said, it's basically it's regulatory framework that allow us to do or not. Just for example, from Rangoon to Naypyidaw is 5-hour drive. It's only one gas station available. So that is a critical one, whether you can help what they call self-sufficiency in terms of comfort or not. But the key thing is even have a license to operate a retail station is still difficulty. Financial infrastructure is not there. You still need a paper cash to go pay or settle everything. So I think it needs time to develop. And I think the most important thing is they are much smaller than what we think. So, when investors come in, everything look very big. Everything look, $100 million is very big. We look at the real estate asset and everything. But when you go to Myanmar, the most difficult thing is to find a cheap hotel room that you can afford. So that is something very, very difficult to make sure that we understand and respect the landscape of the country that we're going to win. In Laos, they are very clear. They want to be Switzerland of Asia. They don't want industry, but they want to be a healthy and green living, a lung for ASEAN. So we have to respect that. So what are we going to do? We're going to do renewable. The thing that renew, and our project, actually we have small hydro project that dedicate the electricity to Laos. But I think the area that the win-win situation where we have to respect what is the need for the host country and what are we going to do. I don't think there will be a petrochemical plant in Laos anyway. It may be in Vietnam but not in Laos. But this is the area that what are we going to be offered is going to have to be matching on whether they can take it or not. So I think this is the area of respect. But in terms of intercontinental ASEAN, that's a different game. Philippines is totally different game. The problem with the Philippines is not national oil company compete. It's just something, it's the barrier, regulatory barrier that the Philippines have preventing us to make sure that we can operate in the free market condition in the Philippines. In Malaysia, it's too much competition, and we don't see the area that fit in terms of other business except doing trading and business retail in there. Singapore, of course, is the headquarters, nothing much to be able to invest in there. So it's the area that connecting to each other. We're also exploring coal asset in ASEAN now to look for a possibility of generating coal-firing power plant in order to fulfill the power need for ASEAN. So I think each are unique. So I think Kun Komsun had to be more precise on what country, and I can tell you where's the area that we can go through. But all in all, I think we have to build along the connectivity of the region, and we grow. We are in the business of connectivity already, so we're going to be there when the connectivity is available.
Following up on these questions, this connectivity, we already touched a little bit on the win-win strategy. Is this strategy or is this connectivity will continue to benefit also benefit the people at large in these countries? Because what we have seen is that if the people is not benefit, then later on there will be some kind of unrest following up.
Yeah, there's only one business model is win-win. If I win, you lost, it's not the business model. It's not acceptable anymore. So what the way that we can give, providing what they call the best service and technology, although we don't have much, but we make sure that the retail or the opportunity, the business we are invested in the region, it had to be complied with the best standard that we have. Like for example, we can provide free Wi-Fi to the retail station, so at least they have a developed product in the developing area. So it's more like building like a Singapore model 30 years ago, or being a developed world in developing country in ASEAN. So I think this is the area that people are looking for. People are looking forward to a better living, a better communication, better technology, and where's the area? There's only one area that we are in touch with the retail, which is retail station. So we want to make sure that our retail is not oil station anymore. Now we have coffee. And what are we going to integrate the coffee value chain back to CSR or not? We're going to be growing coffee by community, and we can buy the coffee to produce coffee cup. We're going to build a high technology biodegradable coffee cup. That's going to be a next generation of petrochemical, which is going to be green oriented. So this is the area that I think we have to be fair, and we have to make sure that in the world of connectivity, there's nothing to be hidden. I think we have to be built on research and technology and transform that research back to our brother in ASEAN.
All right. Given the interest of time, I think the last question to Dr. Piyasvasti, basically it's the same question that I just asked Kun Surong. Do you agree that this, increasing connectivity will be benefiting people at large in these countries?
Oh yes, certainly. Increasing connectivity will benefit, can benefit all people in these areas. And if you look in our case, in the case of Thai investment, I believe that it had been win-win, and I think we had been fair to brothers around this region. Projects in Laos, hydro projects in Laos, I think we had been negotiating fairly, paying fair electricity price. In the case of Myanmar, it's more than fair because we are certainly paying a much higher price than what we are buying from the concessionaire in the Gulf of Thailand.
Okay, given the benefit of time, I think I would like to wrap this up, and I would like to thank our both honorable guests for their insight and their strategies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the insightful sessions from our experts from the energy and petrochemical